Okay, welcome to StallSide. Our guest today is Dr. Bill Rood, and we're looking to answer the questions of which one of the dynamic duo was he? Was he Batman or Robin? And if he was either, how did they get into those tights? So, Dr. Rood, pleased to have you here today.
Pleased to be here.
Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank
okay,
you.
So we'll start off by you. The floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about your early life and growing up.
Well, growing up, I grew up in the suburbs in a little town in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area called Fremont. And no ranch experience, no farm experience, nothing like that. Grew up with dogs and cats. Had two really fabulous dogs. This is my childhood I remember the most. The first was a miniature Manchester, and the other was a Bedlington Terrier. Disgusting dogs, but that's what we had. That's what we had. So my beginning of my sophomore year in veterinary school, our neighbor came over. His name was Dr. Norm Freed, and he was a graduate of the University of California, Davis, 1952. So he was in the fourth class. And he asked my father if I would assist him in a cesarean in his animal hospital. My father asked me. I had no idea what a cesarean was, being 16 years old, you know.
On a cow, I assume, or you don't know yet?
No, it was definitely a dog.
Oh, a dog.
It was a dog, yes, it was a dog. It was a small animal hospital. It was a boxer, actually. I remember it really well. And I liked it. I liked that. You know, I enjoyed it. So I worked for him for the next 3 years, all through high school. Every Wednesday evening and all day Saturday and half day on Sunday. Cleaned kennels, fed dogs, and enjoyed it a lot. So I thought I'd just apply to Davis and go to veterinary school, and that was my introduction to veterinary medicine. So 3 years pre-vet, and then veterinary school for 4 years. In the class of '82, we had 8 women in our class, phenomenal number, and graduated there in 1972 from veterinary school.
So when you started veterinary school, though, what was your vision for what you would do?
Oh, I was going to be what Dr. Norm Freed had. He had a solo small animal practice. You know, very small, just outside the city limits, gravel driveway, operating room that we ate off of, you know. I mean, it was 1963, 64, you know. I remember holding cats, anesthetizing with ether, you know, and my gosh, it was I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the animals. I mean, that perked my interest, and that's why I wanted to go to veterinary school.
Any other professional influences? It sounds like that was really formative to have spent that time with that practitioner. Anybody else professionally that came along early on that led you down the veterinary road?
Well, not necessarily early on, but in veterinary school, our dean was Bill Pritchard. And I spent a lot of time with him, and he was a veterinarian and a lawyer. So that perked my interest in law. And then we had a gentleman in school named Dr. John Hughes, and he was the therio. He taught us equine reproduction. The reproduction in veterinary school was a 15-week class. It was semesters. 14 weeks of the cow, 1 week of the horse. We covered equine reproduction in 1 week, of which the first day he showed slides of his time in Lexington, Kentucky. It wasn't quite the Gluck Center then, but working here at UK with Bob Loy, and I fell in love with Lexington. Wow. I said that Lexington the scenery is beautiful, and John Hughes and I became really good friends, and he had a great influence on my life. So what am I going to do? I'm in veterinary school. I don't want to work on dogs and cats. But my sophomore year, I go, I'm not going to be a companion animal practitioner in this world. And I really don't know anything about horses, and I didn't want to do cattle. So I applied to law school, and ultimately decided to come into UK, University of Kentucky, because my wife, my fiance at that time, had a horse, and I actually rode my first horse as a junior in veterinary school, and liked it. So I said, I'll go to law school in Kentucky and just see what happens. So I came here to UK right after veterinary school, so 10 years of college, graduated, took the bar in 1975.
Yeah. Okay. There's some very...
So you graduated from veterinary school in what year?
1972.
72. Then you went to law school.
Yes, sir.
And then when did you start practicing medicine? Because that blows me away that you could make that transition from vet school 3 years ago to practitioner with the confidence that I know that you had to be able to do that is astounding.
Well, thank you. But I always had good work ethic. And when I was in veterinary school, I worked for the Woodford Veterinary Clinic with Dr. Newell Hicks. And we did cattle. I did a lot of cows, a lot of Semitols, Angus. And I worked on Saturdays at what was then called the Lansdowne Veterinary Clinic in companion animals. Worked at Bluegrass Stockyards Wednesday night, all night long, all while I was in vet school. And then my third year of law school, I beg your pardon, my third year of law school, I quit Woodford and started my own ambulatory practice, if you will, and worked 20 hours a week as a law clerk for Stall Keenan Park, a big firm downtown. I always had a lot of ambition, a lot of energy. So,
okay, that's a great story. I mean, you've been very, very busy, and there's been a lot of people that have guided you. Talk about family. You know, you're not going to be able to focus and do the things that you did professionally, which are impressive, without a good, solid family background and good values instilled. So, tell us a little bit about family.
Oh, I had a great time growing up. My father was very influential. He passed away 40 years ago, unfortunately. But he had a master's degree and worked on his PhD, and it was very studious. And one of the things he used to always say is everything turns out for the best. You know, you just try your best, and everything will turn out for the best. And I've always liked that. I had a brother and a sister, currently married, to a lovely wife. We have 7 children between us, 9 grandchildren, and 2 on the way. So we'll soon have 11 grandchildren. So I've been very blessed, personally and professionally. Very blessed.
Okay. Well, I alluded to this at the start. You are one of 2 people that have blazed quite the trail in veterinary medicine, regionally and, in fact, nationally. Do you remember your first meeting with Tom Riddle?
No, sir. I thought about that before this. How did I meet Tom? At that time, this was 1981, and I'd been a solo practitioner in Lexington for 6 years. And I had a very large practice. Clients were Taylor Made Farm and Gainesway Farm and Glencoe and Green Hill Farm, Sally Horse Fans, and Keeneland. I was track veterinarian at Keeneland from 74 to 80. So I witnessed every race for 6 years but one, and that's a long story. But okay,
which I think we need to get to right now.
All right, here we go. All right, so it was the first race at Keeneland. I don't remember what it was, spring or fall, and it was daily double. And the horse that did not win, up the track, he broke his leg, fractured his leg. So there was a ship in Barn 3, came from the training center. So I went down to Barn 3. We loaded him in the ambulance, put an air splint on his leg, took him down. It wasn't euthanized. It wasn't that kind of horse. And waited for the trainer, who was the owner, to come down. And he didn't come down. So I watched the second race, the only race I missed in 6 years, 12 race meets, on the video, and the owner comes down finally. And I said, "Where have you been? Your horse has got a broken leg." And he said to me, "Well, Doc, I was live in the double."
I suppose that comes down to how you organize your priorities in life.
Yeah, I guess so. And then ultimately we put a cast on the leg. We went to a farm in Bourbon County, and I went to visit it several times. And last visit, the horse had an enormous head, enormous, swelled up. He said, "Doc, look what your cast did to my horse's head." And I said, "Have you been giving him bute extravenously?" Yeah. So anyway, Keeneland was fun. It was an opportunity to meet people and to grow.
Okay. So you may not remember the first meeting with Dr. Riddle, but you probably remember why you went into business with him. What qualities did you see that have actually been what drove your relationship?
Well, I remember the first dinner. Tom had called me, Dr. Riddle called me, and I went to his home. He lived on Spencer Farm. He was his second year of residency there. And met his wife, lovely wife, Margaret. And we were about to sit down for dinner, and he got a call. Had a gray horse, a gray mare on the farm at Spendthrift that was colicking. So Dr. Riddle and I rode with him to the horse, and we spent our first evening together at Haggard, Davidson McGee with Dr. Paul Thorpe.
Really?
Yeah, my first introduction. First time I really remember being with Tom, we spent the whole time with Dr. Thorpe at Haggard's. Yeah, it's a small world. It's a small world.
That's a rather interesting story. So you decided to go into business. What was it like to actually sit down and formulate that plan? Because you're talking early 80s, right? I mean, this is country just come off period of inflation. This is Reagan recession time. This is probably not the ideal time to go into business. So you decided to go into business. What was your vision for that business? And how was the decision? How did it feel at the time to make that decision?
Well, it all started, my vision for practice, equine practice in Lexington, was going to be a 3-person practice. We'd all 3 of us would work real hard in the springtime, and in the fall, we'd each take a lot of time off. That's all I wanted.
Well, you do have a 3-person practice repeated about 16 to 18 times.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. But at that time, we didn't know. And I had a foal born in the spring of 1984. It was exclusive native who was leading sire, stood a spendthrift out of a miracle piece of pie. And I went to visit that foal and in the morning, and the farm manager was holding the foal in the corner, and it wasn't going to live. I went back in the evening, same thing. So Dr. Doug Byers had just moved to Lexington, so I called him and wanted to send the foal to Haggard's McGee at the time, and Dr. Byers told me they didn't accept foals. They weren't doing neonatology. They'd just gotten there. So I asked Dr. Byers, where do I send it? And he said, call Woodford, try them. So we sent the foal over to Woodford Veterinary Hospital, where I used to work. And a gentleman there named Tim Cudd. And he put the foal on a ventilator for an incredible amount of time. 14 days that foal lived on a ventilator, on a raised bed, and lived. And I have a wind picture in my office of this foal. And talking to Dr. Cudd at that time, I'd like to have a foal clinic. I'd like to build a little foal hospital. And I still have this picture of this little foal running around with a set of Northern Dancer twin fillies that Nelson Buncombe had in this little pen that wasn't even a stall at Woodford, So talking to Dr. Cudd, we want to build a clinic. Dr. Riddle, what do you think? And when Tom became my partner, we signed a contract September 1981, and he came to work for me January 1st, 1982. And 3 years later, I sold him half of my practice for a very small amount of money. Very small amount of money. Best investment I ever made. Changed the name from William A. Rood DVM PSE to Rood Riddle PSE. And we became 50-50 partners, which is the only way to do it. I've always thought partnerships should be equal. And we designed a little foal clinic. And when we were designing it and traveling around looking at different hospitals around the country, Florida and North Carolina and Virginia, we needed to have a surgery room. So we worked with our architect, and we had the surgery room, and we built this hospital. 1985, opened up February 1st, 1986, and didn't have a surgeon. But Dr. Emerson came March 1st, 1986. We were really, really naive. I can't, as I look back, we didn't have any money. We didn't really have the expertise. At that time, there were no boarded practitioners in Lexington hardly. I mean, Dr. Thorpe at Haggard's he graduated from veterinary school and said, I want to be a surgeon, came here without an internship residency and just started cutting on horses. I mean, we had no expertise like Dr. Morresey or Dr. Bramley, boarded, certified. It was unheard of. So we built this hospital and hired people, and in time, Dr. Bramwich came. But when we came here, it was Dr. Rood, Dr. Riddle, Dr. Scott Pierce, Dr. Jim Moorhead, and Dr. Larry Olson. And the 5 of us just took a plunge and built it.
So talk about, because you and Dr. Riddle are completely different people. Both great men, but very, very different. How did those differences, how were they part of your success, and were the road bumps along the way because of it? And when we talked to Dr. Riddle, it seems like the vision that both of you had for the hospital was never what you've built today. But if you could talk about those differences just a little bit.
Actually, Dr. Barber, you'd be surprised. Dr. Riddle and I are both we're introverts, very much introvert. And if you look at the disc analysis that we did with Pfizer, I think, or Zoetis, our dots are right on top of each other. We're so much alike. We don't come across that way, but what I enjoyed about Tom Dr. Riddle he's a gentleman. And I knew it when I met him. He was a Southern gentleman, and he was a great horseman. You know, he was raised with horses. He's a much better practitioner than I ever was. And when he became my partner, I said, I want to do the managing. I always want to do the managing. That's what I enjoyed the most. And so he said, fine, you manage and I'll do the vet work. And we worked together as practitioners until 2000, and then the hospital got too big. But no, we never dreamed that we would have a hospital this size with 80-some veterinarians. I mean, that's way beyond what we thought. We just wanted to take care of our clients because we, at that time, Rood and Riddle in 1985 was the largest referring practice to Hagen-Davis-McGee. So why not have our own? And we were the 9th equine surgery table in the Lexington area, and we hired really, really good people and let them do their job. Never try to interfere. Just do the best you can and work hard.
You know, that's a really interesting concept that you've brought up, is that Dr. Riddle and yourself agreed to divide the labor in the practice, and, you know, veterinarians are fairly individualistic, and yet he was pretty happy with you doing the managing, and you were pretty happy with him doing the bulk of the veterinary work, and it worked out for you because each of you accepted the other had strengths which made the sum of you greater.
Absolutely. Neither one of us, together, our synergies worked very, very, very well together. You know, I practiced for 25 years, and then the hospital got too big. So I retired from practice, if you will, and became the managing partner of the practice.
Yeah. And looking at that, that was a really important sort of key foundation to the success of your relationship with Dr. Riddle. Going across to the practice itself, what other keys do you think have been the success to Rood and Riddle? What things would you pick out, having managed the practice for a long time and having seen it develop? What do you think has been key to the success of the practice?
I think it was our vision. You know, there's I don't know, you two know better than me now, but maybe 150 solo practitioners in the Lexington area, something like that. Guessing, I don't know. And our vision was to have a hospital, as small as we thought it would be, but I wanted something that had brick and mortar. I wanted to grow equity not only in our veterinary practice, which would, but also grow equity in a real estate partnership. You know, we'd have something that you could pass on, and we've done that. You know, I respect those veterinarians that are out there working by themselves. I have all the respect in the world because I know how hard that is. But to have a group practice and to have a hospital practice with the best clinicians in the world working out of it's quite an accomplishment, a lot to be proud of. Very blessed.
Yeah, you've mentioned code of practice, but what other things do you think are at play, like how you hired people or the philosophies that you have in practice? How do you think that's impacted the growth of what you've built?
Well, I think loyalty. You know, we hired the best we could hire, but we've always been loyal to people. And by that I mean, when I first started practicing, still a third-year law student, 3L law student in the UK, and I walked into what was the W.A. Butler branch over on Andino, and the gentleman there, Jerry Serbaugh, was the manager, and I wanted to buy a bottle of penicillin and a bag of sleeves. That's all I needed to practice that day. And he treated me like I was his best customer, his best client. And I've never forgotten that. You know, I was nothing. I mean, my first year of practice, well, frankly, my first year of practice, I grossed $16,000. You know, grew the second year to $64,000 and thought this was great. And he treated me like I was the biggest and the best. And I've always admired that. You know, you treat everybody the same with respect, and because you never know who's going to become the big client. And in time, ironically, Rood and Riddle became the W. Butler's largest customer, largest client, if you will, to the point that they built their second largest warehouse just a quarter mile away. And I've always been loyal. Jerry's son Danny has been our rep for since 1975, 74. He and his father been loyal to the bank that we use, Central Bank, been loyal to the architect, same architect for all these years, contractors, and I expect the same loyalty from our clients that we extend to those people. And I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Speaking of people, what did you look for in people when you brought them into this practice?
Oh, I think we always try to hire the best that was available. So we searched universities. We had great success with the hospital clinicians that we could entice to come from the university, like Dr. Morresey, like Dr. Bramlage, and Dr. Embertson, and Dr. Reed, and Dr. Hubble, on and on and on and on. And then we grew other practitioners from within, like Dr. Barber was an intern. And you spend a year with a man like Dr. Barber, and you respect him, and he's very qualified. He's a family man, and he's a great practitioner. So why wouldn't you want him in your practice? And if we've been fortunate to be in Lexington, where we could hire these men and women, these colleagues, and grow, and the practice would grow with them. And Lexington is a unique opportunity to do that. It's many fabulous practices across the United States, but Lexington is a unique area that allowed us to do that. All you had to do was have the vision and to hire these folks and respect for what they did and let them do their job and give them the tools they needed and support them.
As these people have come in, they've brought skills. How do you think veterinary medicine has changed from the time that you were in partnership with Dr. Riddle, working out of the garage, to now?
Practice has changed so much. Corporate practices, for one. Who would have thought 40 years ago, 35 years ago, that there would be opportunity for many practices to sell out to a corporation. It's changed how small animal practice, companion animal practice is practiced. They're owned by money managers and whatnot in New Jersey and New York, and it's affected, I think, how companion animal practice is practiced. I don't know for a fact, I just suspect it has. And they're trying to do the same in equine, but I don't think Rood and Riddle will ever be a member of a corporate practice. I hope that we always remain independent and do our own. And then, so the corporate world, and then the specialties. When I started, there were no specialties. There was not a boarded. Remember the American College of Veterinary Surgeons, or American College of Veterinary Internal Medicine, or a thoragenologist, or an anesthesiologist, radiologist. That's changed how we practice. When I came to Lexington, the veterinarians at Hager Davis McGee wore ties, and they were well-respected individuals, and medicine at that time was an art. I mean, they could do things just intuitively. And now it's more of a science. Well, we improved the quality.
We made, when we met with Dr. Riddle, we made fun of your ultrasound machine and his El Camino, by the way.
Yeah, we're wanting to find both of them, put them up on blocks somewhere, and show them respect every day.
Yeah, I wished I had that ultrasound machine. It must have weighed 60 pounds.
It was the first ultrasound I ever used.
Yeah, it was.
You had to hit it.
It was something. You had to hit to bring the cup.
Get it to work.
Wouldn't have to slap it on the side. But it had a lot of falls in it. It had a lot of pregnancies in that machine.
So, but our technology has changed a lot too.
Yeah.
So
I remember when the first ultrasound came from Twink Allen to Dr. Gordon Layton, and it was only one ultrasound in Lexington, Kentucky, and they brought it to the Neal Barn at Gainesway every Friday afternoon to ultrasound my mares. They'd bring them in from different farms, and we learned so much. So technologies. When I first started practice, we had dip tanks to develop radiographs.
Yeah.
And we moved up to what was a processor and thought this was really great. And then, and then it's DR, then CR, and CR, and then DR, and then now CAT scans and MRIs and I think the technology and the expertise that we have. I don't know how veterinary students can learn everything they have to learn. I mean, certainly, I look at the textbooks nowadays and just shake my head. You know, it was just easier back then, I think.
Well, I think we look back though and wonder how you did it without the tools that we have too. They're two different challenges.
Yeah.
Sure. But nobody had the tools.
Yeah. But you're also trying to solve the same problems that we do now with less to work with, and you were still successful.
Well, and we still lost a lot of horses, but all you can do is the best you can. And what I liked about Dr. Riddle and Dr. Pierce and you two gentlemen, everybody tries their best. That's all you can ask, And clients, they just have to accept that. If they don't accept it, tell them the obituary page. Not everybody lives.
Yeah.
You're not all winners. So
it's been interesting listening to you when you talk about your early years in practice, and you mention your relationship with Haggards and the personalities over there. And we live in a competitive landscape right now, but we look on them as friends and colleagues.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily competitors. What would you like to say to the people that were formative in your early career that worked around the corner? How do you think they helped you and made you the practitioner you are?
I think many ways. They always supported our practice. So before we had the hospital, I can remember, we'd send all the surgeries to Haggerty-McGee, and then when they had a neonatal unit, we'd send the foals. I remember one time so well. I had a maiden mare from France, and she had a problem. And I took her to Haggerty-McGee, and Dr. Thorpe was the surgeon, and I walked in the door, and he examined her. And one of the major shareholders at Haggerty came in the door right after me and told Thorpe, "You'll look at my horse first." And Dr. Thorpe looked at him and said, "No, Rood came first." So I've always respected that. And I've always said that Rood and Riddle will only do as well as Haggard does. Always wish them the very best. If they do very, very well, we'll do very well. If anything should happen to Haggard's Equine Medical Institute now, it would be detrimental to us. They're good competition. They're ethical. They practice great medicine, and we have respect for each other. I can say in all these years of practice, they have never hired one of Rood and Riddle's practitioners, and we've never hired one of theirs. And if we started that would be a terrible, terrible thing to do. We've exchanged staff. We have some of their staff, and they have some of our former staff, but we've never tried to hire one of their elite members, and they've never tried that I know of to hire one of ours. So it's good respect, and they're good competition. They're fair. I have nothing but good to say.
So let me move to just a little bit. You've expanded to Wellington and Saratoga. Can you talk about those decisions to expand? Was that what was the reasoning behind it? Was that a difficult decision?
The reasoning was we had horses, clients, and their horses that's wintered in South Florida near Wellington and spent their summers in Aqueduct, Belmont, and Saratoga. So if we're going to service those clients best, it seemed to me the logical thing to have a practice in South Florida and a practice in Saratoga. We actually looked at practice near Belmont, but I couldn't in good conscience ask anybody to live in Elmont, New York. It's just not where I would want to live. Saratoga is where I want to live. Mm-hmm. So we bought those. So it was, first of all, to take care of the clients and horses. And secondly was to expand, to get away from Lexington, and in the Lexington area itself, and then to diversify the types of horses we see. Wellington has a great number of show jumpers and hunters and whatnot, and polo horses, and upstate New York is a little different than here. So it took care of our clients, treated our horses, expanded our area of service, and we brought in services that we weren't doing before. So, and I would like to continue. If I had a voice, I would say we should go to Chicago next, Chicago area, and capture that market as we have. And with our expertise and our name, the veterinary community, equine community, is a very small community, and with our name, I think we do very well wherever we go. I would not like to go west of the Mississippi, but I think if we were in Chicago, that would be my last acquisition. I would like that very much.
your success has been built on a lot of hard work. And now in the profession, there's a lot of concern about balancing work and family. And what would you like to sort of say about that? You know, what effects has work had on your life, and what advice, more importantly, would you give to somebody in the profession that's younger to sort of say, how can I have it all?
Well, I was not good at work-life balance. You know, I don't think Dr. Riddle was good at work-life balance, although he got home for dinner most every night with his family, which I never could. And we sacrificed. You know, I sacrificed a lot of my personal life to build the practice. So I would say that we need to respect the younger folks that come behind us. We can't expect them to work the same level, at the same level we work the number of hours. It's not fair. The detriment to that is how do you pay? You know, if you're going to have, if you're going to take a position, a full-time equivalent, if you will, veterinary medicine, and now you're going to make it a two-person job, then how are you going to pay them well enough? And that's something that Dr. Morresey and Dr. Barber and Dr. Spike Pierce are going to have to figure out in the future, because we can't expect. We don't really want the future veterinarians to work like we did. It's just not going to happen. And I hope that we'll somehow get to that point where an equine practitioner works 50 hours a week, 40 hours a week instead of 75 or 80 or 90. I mean, we have to get to that point, or we're not going to have practitioners. And that is a concern of mine, always been a concern of mine, that we need to have a pipeline. We need to bring young people into the profession. And
well, I think it's going to happen just a lot, because that's the culture and the thought from the students that are graduating now. They're being taught that, and they're being taught well. And I do remember, and I appreciate that sentiment, because one of the things I remember from your retirement party was it was a very heartfelt apology to your family, and I appreciated that, because that stuck with me. That was,
thank you.
You know, I think it was a good lesson for those of us who were there and could hear that. So
yeah, it was a very human moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with Bart in that. I said, yeah, you know, I mean, you built this great practice, but you also realised that it rested upon a lot of things that you may not necessarily have been glad to give.
Yeah. I remember when we bonded as a family, there were 6 practitioners, and we went to a retreat center, and I asked them to go around in a circle before we started the agenda at this business meeting, you know, an overnight retreat, to talk to me about your feelings, tell me how you feel. And I won't say who it was, but there was one practitioner said he cried, one of our partners, and I said, I wished I spent more time with my family. And that meant a lot to all of us, because he's a great practitioner, but he sacrificed, and we all did. And I would hope that doesn't continue, that we can figure out a way to respect these young folks and their time. Because, you know, what we do as a veterinarian is what we do is a professional life. It's not our whole life. It's just how we earn an income. And we enjoy it. Wouldn't change it. But it is only one aspect of life.
Yeah,
So.
That's good advice. What do you see as the future for thoroughbred racing? I mean, we're dependent upon the horses. Where do you see the horses going?
Oh, I think there'll always be thoroughbred racing. I think it'll contract like most people do. You know, there'll be boutique racetracks. But, you know, we've survived before. Like Dr. Morrison, when you said at the beginning, you know, 1986 was not a good time to start a practice. 2000 was not a good time. 2020 is certainly not a good time. 2008 was not a good time. But we'll survive. We'll survive. I think racing needs to change some. I think, you know, the consumer nowadays wants immediate gratification. They don't want to wait 30 minutes between a race. They want to pull the handle and get the reward. But it'll survive. It'll survive. It'll be a different environment than what we've had in the past. You know, older people like to say they lived in the golden time, but, you know, the golden time's still out there.
As the horse changes and as horses sort of use for people's work and entertainment, how do you see the future of Rood and Riddle changing with that? You've mentioned, you know, about changes in thoroughbred racing that you just described. How do you see the future of Rood and Riddle going with that and morphing to best serve the horse and the people attached?
Well, I think Rood Riddle will continue to grow. I don't think expand it to the point that we can. I think there's still the practice of veterinary medicine will continue to grow. I think that Dr. Debbie Spike Pierce is now the CEO president, and she is probably a better leader than I was. I was more of a manager type, and she is more of a leader. And I think under her mentorship that the practice will grow and will continue to provide services. I think the Rood Riddle real estate will continue to grow, Dr. Alan Ruggles, because I think there's enough corpus, if you will, that we can expand into other areas. It doesn't have to be a veterinary hospital. It's a real estate investment. And the practice itself could expand into small animals. Companion practice, there's no reason why we couldn't have a referral hospital across the street that did dogs and cats and utilize the equipment that we have here, our lab and our CT and MRI and whatnot. It'd be top. And then the pharmacy, under Dr. Barber. It has no limit to what it can be. Because the veterinary world is going to continue to expand, and if our pharmacy can continue to expand with it. So I have nothing but admiration for what we have. I have nothing. I see the future is very bright, and our practice has been blessed. I'm very blessed, and I'm encouraged that you young men will carry on and take up from what we did.
We like the young man. That's very generous of you to say. So we've talked a lot of the future about what you've built. What about the future for Bill Rood? You have turned your energies to other aspects of your life, and I think it'd be a great time to let's talk about your future.
Thank you. Like I said, veterinary practice is what we do for a living, but it's not really who we are. We're all people of faith at one level or another, and I've devoted a lot of my time in the last couple of years to the Catholic Church. I'm a deacon. I've been a deacon since 2008. I've baptized many of the children of the employees that work here. Witnessed several marriages of people that work here, and that gives me great satisfaction. I enjoy that. Faith is important, and to be grounded helps you, keeps you where you need to be, because none of us. It's all a gift. Everything we have is a gift. I remember thinking when I heard a sermon or homily years ago, it's a gift. It's a gift. And I thought to myself, yeah, well, I worked hard. I'm smart. On and on. But really, my desire to work was a gift. My health was a gift. I did nothing to earn health. I did nothing for intelligence. I mean, it's just everything we have, and to realize that and embrace that is important. So to give back to the Catholic Church and the people that are in need, that's what I enjoy. Plus, we'll have 11 grandchildren. So I could spend time, my wife and I, Karen, we could spend time just visiting grandchildren. I'd be very happy to do that.
There'd be worse ways to spend your time.
There'd be worse ways, absolutely.
So if you wanted to sum up the last 40 years in one sentence, what would it be?
I would like to express my gratitude and respect for the people that got us to where we are. Because it wasn't me. It was the people that surrounded us, that elevated us, and the practice of veterinary medicine and the equine profession. And I'd expect my gratitude and respect for those people.
That's sage advice. Okay, well, that's it for StallSide for this episode. Our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Bill Rood for sharing his insights and his wisdom, and also his vision for our future. Any comments, Bart?
No, thank you for being here. You said that Dr. Spike is a better leader. I would say she's a different leader, and you both have, because your open door policy always meant a lot to me, because I was in your office once a week for the entire time that you were there, and I don't remember. I'm sure there was a time when you were busy and you didn't have time for me, but I sure don't remember it when I didn't walk in and I wasn't welcomed, and I appreciated that very much.
Open doors.
Yeah. And you won't remember this, but I still have the voicemail from you offering me a position at this practice on the answer phone in my house.
Is that right?
Yeah, I brought it down from Pennsylvania, and that's the one message I have never erased.
That gives me chills. That's good. Thank you.
Well, you're a whole lot of telemarketers, so, I'll just knock you down. But no, that message is still there, and from time to time I play that because it's been quite a formative opportunity in my life.
Yeah, and we're happy you're here. I mean, we're a family, and that family has grown, and we encourage one another. Glad. It's all worked out well.
We're grateful you did what you did.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the plunge all that time ago, because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beneficiaries to what you and Tom did. We appreciate it.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your time. It's been
You're very
wonderful.
welcome. Thank you.
We'll call that a wrap.